The dusty photograph. Sunbeams sliced through the gloom of Grandma Rose's attic, illuminating swirling motes of dust. Lily waved away the particles, a cough escaping her lips. The air, thick with dried lavender and the ghosts of forgotten keepsakes, pressed in around her. Ghostly swathes of cobwebs veiled furniture cloaked in white linen. She adored the space, a secret realm, a place where time seemed suspended. Navigating the labyrinth of bygone treasures, her fingers brushed the cool cheek of a porcelain doll nestled high on a shelf. A chipped teacup, adorned with painted roses, drew her gaze. She pictured a young Grandma Rose hosting imaginary tea parties. Then she spotted it, a weighty, leather-bound photo album tucked into the bottom drawer of a time-worn oak dresser. The leather was scored with cracks, the gilt lettering faded almost to oblivion. Curiosity piqued, Lily hauled the album into the sunlit patch and sat, legs crossed, on the floorboards. The initial pages showcased familiar faces, a youthful Grandma Rose, her laughter evident even in the still image, and Grandpa Joe in his army attire, looking impossibly serious. Then, dislodged, a photograph spiraled to the floor. Lily retrieved it. A wedding portrait. A woman resplendent in a sweeping white gown stood beside a man unknown to Lily. Though the woman's features blurred due to the photograph's age, Lily glimpsed the intricate lace of her veil and the cascade of lilies of the valley she clutched. A hint of sorrow shadowed her eyes, a quiet resignation that sparked a pang in Lily's chest. Who was she, and why had this picture remained hidden? Later, Lily presented the photograph to her mother, Sarah. "Mom, who is this woman?" she inquired, her voice a low murmur of intrigue. Sarah accepted the print, her brow knitting together as she scrutinized the image. I don't recognize her, sweetie. I've never laid eyes on this before." She flipped the photograph, searching for markings on the back. Perhaps a friend of Grandma Rose? Some distant relation, maybe? But why wouldn't Grandma have shown it to me? Lily pressed, her imagination already taking flight. She shared all the other wedding pictures. Sarah sighed, raking a hand through her tresses. "Darling, Grandma Rose carries a world of memories within her. Some she openly shares, others she guards closely. Why not inquire about it yourself?" She returned the photo to Lily. "You'll find her in the garden pruning her roses. Tread gently, all right?" Clutching the photograph, Lily ventured outside, her heart thrumming with anticipation. The sinking sun painted long shadows across the verdant lawn as she made her way to the rose garden, the intoxicating fragrance of blooming flowers permeating the air. She discovered Grandma Rose kneeling amidst her beloved bushes, her weathered hands deftly snipping at spent blooms. This promised to be enlightening. Rose's journey west. "Grandma, please? Just a sliver of the story. I swear I won't interrupt." Lily's wide, pleading gaze was Rose's soft spot. A sigh escaped her lips, a drawn-out exhale like a slow leak from an old bellows. All right, but just a taste. It happened ages ago, child. And some memories are best left slumbering." Lily settled onto the edge of the worn armchair, hands clasped tight in her lap, a picture of anticipation. Rose sank back into her own seat, the familiar groan of the springs a comforting counterpoint to the hush that had fallen. "Before your grandfather, I wielded a needle in New York City. Quite skillfully, if I do say so myself. I could fashion a gown from rags that would turn heads on Fifth Avenue. But—" Rose drifted off, her gaze finding the window, the riotous colors of her rose garden pulling her in. But it was a solitary existence. Endless days bent over the sewing machine, fingertips perpetually pricked and sore. And the nights, the silence pressed in. All my friends had husbands, began their families. I craved that connection, that shared life. She closed her eyes briefly, as if tasting the lingering bitterness of those lonely evenings. Then, one day, a lifeline appeared in the newspaper. Advertisements from men out west seeking wives. Farmers, ranchers, men needing a partner to build a life, to establish a home. It felt like destiny nudging me. An opportunity for more than just endless seams and aching joints. Rose's eyes opened, her expression softening with reminiscence. The choice wasn't made without considerable thought. Abandoning everything familiar, my family, my companions, my entire world, it was daunting. Yet, the prospect of a life overflowing with affection, with camaraderie, with purpose beyond mere stitches, that outweighed the apprehension. She rose and approached the bookshelf, her fingers trailing along the spines as if searching for a specific trigger. I recall the day I boarded that train. The station was a chaotic ballet of steam and faces. I gripped my small valise, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Within that bag, I'd stowed all my hopes and dreams, alongside my finest sewing implements and a likeness of my mother. Rose turned back to Lily, a delicate smile playing on her lips. As the train lurched forward, pulling away from the platform, I gazed out the window, watching the city recede into the distance. I conjured images of my future, a snug homestead, the sound of children's laughter echoing, a strong, gentle man at my side. I imagined the aroma of baking bread wafting through the air, nurturing a flourishing garden, creating a haven brimming with warmth and devotion. That's what I envisioned, Lily. That's what I yearned for as that iron horse carried me westward. Dustville Disappointment. Dustville was aptly named. A perpetual haze of ochre permeated everything, the dilapidated clapboard buildings, dogs scratching for relief from fleas, even the sky seemed to choke on the airborne grit. Disembarking from the stagecoach, Rose watched her embroidered shawl instantly acquire a film of grime. This was it, her fresh start. A man peeled himself from the general store's porch, shielding his eyes. He possessed the height she'd envisioned, yet his stooped posture betrayed a weariness as profound as the town's. Jedediah, undoubtedly. Rose? His voice rasped, suggesting a diet of dried earth. Yes, she responded, attempting a smile. Jedediah? A clipped nod was his only reply, his gaze sweeping over her with a swiftness that felt both cursory and intrusive. He circled her, a slow appraisal reminiscent of a merchant examining flawed fabric. Only the rusty screech of the weather vane above the store broke the heavy silence. Rose suppressed the urge to smooth her already impeccable dress. At last he halted, his expression a blank canvas. You're more mature than I anticipated. The words struck with bruising force. Rose's carefully nurtured optimism evaporated. Mature? She was 38, hardly decrepit. Had she erred in her correspondence? No, her age had been explicitly stated. My letters were quite clear regarding my age, she said, her voice betraying a tremor. Jedediah shifted, avoiding her gaze. The photograph, it was kind. He spat a brown stream into the dirt, missing her boot by inches. I need a woman to work the land, raise children. Someone with youth's vigor. The blood fled Rose's face. She'd braced herself for possible rejection, but this raw dismissal, based on perceived wrinkles and the accumulated weight of years, was an unanticipated sting. I am robust, she protested, barely audible. I am skilled. I can adapt. He raised a hand, silencing her. It won't serve, Rose. I regret your long journey. However, I require someone younger. Someone more suited. He pivoted and retreated towards the general store, leaving Rose alone amidst the swirling dust devils, her aspirations swept away like desert scrub. The stagecoach, her means of escape, was long gone. Dustville had claimed her, offering no comfort, no welcome. Only a bitter, suffocating disillusionment. A kindred spirit. Dust swirled around Rose's ankles, mirroring the whirlwind of panic in her chest. Dustville wasn't the vibrant town depicted in the advertisement. It was a skeletal scattering of buildings clinging to the parched earth, and Rose, with her meager belongings and broken dreams, felt like another tumbleweed caught in its desolate embrace. She wandered past the silent saloon, its batwing doors hanging askew, and the blacksmith's forge cold and empty. Each vacant storefront seemed to whisper of abandonment and regret. A bell chimed, a bright, almost defiant sound, cutting through the oppressive silence. Rose turned towards it, drawn by the promise of human presence. The sign above the door read Martha's Mercantile, General Store. Inside, the air was thick with the comforting sense of dried herbs, molasses, and oiled leather. Jars of brightly colored candies lined the counter, a stark contrast to the drab landscape outside. Behind the counter stood a woman with a kind face etched with the wisdom of years. Her gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her eyes, the color of warm honey, held a gentle curiosity. Lost, are you, dear? The woman asked, her voice soft and melodic. Rose swallowed, her throat tight. I was supposed to meet someone. He wasn't there. Martha's expression softened further. Dustville can be a cruel mistress. Name's Martha. And you are. Rose. The name felt foreign on her tongue, a relic of a life that no longer existed. Martha studied her for a moment, then rounded the counter. Come now, you look like you haven't eaten in days. I've got some stew simmering in the back. You can tell me all about it then. The stew was simple, but it tasted like salvation. As Rose ate, she recounted her story, the words tumbling out in a rush of vulnerability. Martha listened patiently, offering the occasional comforting murmur. He wanted a younger woman, Rose finished, her voice barely a whisper. Martha patted her hand. Some men are fools, dear. They chase after fleeting beauty and miss the real treasures. She paused, her eyes twinkling. Tell you what, Rose? I could use some help around here. The shelves need stocking, the inventory needs tending, and frankly, a bit of company would do me good. What do you say? Hope flickered in Rose's chest, a tiny spark in the darkness. I don't know how to thank you. Nonsense. Consider it a trade. A roof over your head for a helping hand. Martha smiled, a genuine, heartwarming smile. We can start tomorrow. The next morning, Rose woke to the smell of freshly baked bread. She found Martha already at work, dusting shelves and arranging bolts of fabric. Rose quickly joined her, sweeping the floor and restocking the candy jars. The work was simple, almost meditative. As she arranged the colorful sweets, she felt a sense of purpose return. The general store, with its comforting smells and the quiet hum of activity, was becoming a sanctuary. She was still heartbroken, still adrift, but here, in this small corner of Dustville, she felt a glimmer of something she hadn't felt in a long time, belonging. The bell above the door chimed again, announcing a customer, and Rose, for the first time since arriving in this desolate town, smiled. The baker's touch. Martha's kitchen, usually redolent with the scent of wood smoke and stewed rabbit, now pulsed with vanilla and cinnamon. Rose, her brow dusted with flour, hummed as she pulled a golden brown apple pie from the oven. The aroma alone was enough to make Jedediah's stomach grumble even after his usual lunch of beans and salt pork. He pretended not to notice, engrossed in sharpening his axe by the window. Land's sakes, Rose, Martha exclaimed, circling the pie like a hawk. That looks fit for a king. Rose blushed, pushing a stray strand of hair behind her ear. Just a little something I used to do back home. Thought the townsfolk might enjoy a treat. The next day, Rose delivered her first batch of pies to Dustville. By afternoon, the whispers started. Old Mrs. Gable, whose gums hadn't tasted a proper sweet in years, declared Rose's rhubarb pie a blessed miracle. Little Timmy, usually more interested in chasing stray dogs, clutched a slice of cherry pie bigger than his face, his eyes wide with bliss. Even gruff Silas, the blacksmith, managed a grunt of approval after devouring a slice of pecan pie, muttering something about not being half bad. Word spread like wildfire. Soon, Rose was baking almost every day, turning out cakes decorated with sugared violets and pies bursting with the season's bounty. Dustville, usually a place of quiet toil and grim faces, seemed to soften, to bloom under Rose's sweet influence. Laughter echoed from the general store as folks gathered to sample her latest creation. Even the children, usually wary of strangers, trailed after Rose, their faces alight with anticipation. Jedediah watched from afar, a knot tightening in his chest. He saw Silas tipping his hat to Rose, a rare sight indeed. He heard the children giggling as she told them stories while frosting cupcakes. He smelled the intoxicating aroma of her baking wafting through the town square, a constant, unwelcome reminder of his mistake. He saw the light return to Dustville, a light he hadn't realized had been extinguished until Rose ignited it. One evening, he found Martha scrubbing a mixing bowl with unusual vigor. "They're talking about starting a bake sale for the church roof," she said, her voice tight. "Seems Rose's cakes are worth more than any sermon these days." Jedediah grunted, turning back to his whittling. He couldn't deny the change in Dustville, the palpable shift in the town's spirit. But acknowledging Rose's worth, admitting he'd been wrong about her, that was a bridge too far. He'd rather choke on sawdust than swallow his pride. The warmth emanating from the kitchen, the sweet scent of Rose's almond cake cooling on the counter, felt like a personal affront. He gripped his knife tighter, carving deeper into the wood, determined to remain as stubborn and unyielding as the mountain that loomed over Dustville. The traveling salesman. The stagecoach rattled into Dustville, spitting gravel and dust like a disgruntled dragon. Samuel clutched his sample case tighter, a leather-bound universe of brushes, combs, and miracle tonics. Dustville. The name itself was hardly inspiring. He hopped down, his boots sinking slightly into the unpaved road. A lone dog barked, the sound echoing off the false front buildings that lined the main street. He adjusted his tie, a splash of emerald green against his otherwise drab traveling suit, and headed towards the only establishment that looked remotely promising, the general store. The bell above the door jingled a cheerful welcome, a stark contrast to the weary sigh that escaped Samuel's lips. The air inside was thick with the aroma of spices, dried beans, and something undeniably delicious. He scanned the shelves, a familiar inventory of necessities and temptations. Behind the counter, a woman with kind eyes and flour dusting her apron smiled warmly. "Welcome to Dustville," she said, her voice a melodic counterpoint to the general store's cacophony of smells. "Looking for anything in particular?" "Just passing through, ma'am," Samuel replied, setting his case down with a thud. "Name's Samuel, traveling salesman. And that smells divine." He gestured towards a cooling rack laden with golden brown pies. "Rose," she offered, extending a hand. Her grip was surprisingly firm. "And that, my friend, is my apple pie, fresh out of the oven." He shook her hand, captivated by the genuine warmth in her eyes. "I can't resist. A slice, please." While Rose cut him a generous piece, Samuel noticed a stack of books tucked away on a shelf behind the counter. "Quite the reader, are you?" he asked, gesturing towards the titles. He recognized several classics and a few more obscure philosophical treatises. Rose's face lit up. More than anything, escaping into a good book is the only way to survive dust-fillsome days. She slid the pie towards him, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "What's your poison? Shakespeare? Dickens? Or something a little more daring?" He chuckled, surprised by her playful spirit. "I confess a weakness for Austen, and I've been known to dabble in Poe when the mood strikes." They talked for what felt like minutes but must have been closer to an hour. About the characters they loved, the plots that thrilled them, the words that sang to their souls. Samuel found himself drawn to Rose's intelligence, her wit, and the quiet strength that radiated from her. He'd met plenty of women on his travels, but none had ever held his attention quite like this. He learned she helped her uncle run the store and dreamed of opening a bookshop. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Samuel realized he should probably be heading to the boarding house on the edge of town. But the thought of leaving Rose's company filled him with an unexpected sense of reluctance. "Thank you for the pie, Rose," he said, gathering his case. "And for the conversation. It was a true pleasure." "The pleasure was all mine, Samuel," she replied, her smile genuine. "Travel safe." He stepped out into the twilight, the taste of apple pie lingering on his tongue, but the scent of possibility sweeter still. Dustville might be a dusty, unremarkable town, but it held a spark he hadn't expected to find. And that spark had a name: Rose. Jealousy's shadow. The afternoon sun dripped honey through the leaves of the ancient oak, dappling the clearing where Samuel and Rose sat. He read aloud from Whitman, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in the air around them. Rose, leaning against the tree trunk, closed her eyes, letting the words wash over her. It was a strange sensation, this peace, this belonging. She'd spent so long bracing for disappointment, she almost didn't know how to accept simple joy. "I loaf and invite my soul," Samuel finished, his gaze lingering on her face. "Do you like Whitman?" Rose opened her eyes, a soft smile gracing her lips. "I do. He sees the world in a way I aspire to." From the edge of the woods, Jedediah watched. The scene unfolded before him like a stage play designed to torment him personally. Samuel, with his kind eyes and gentle touch, stealing what should have been his. Rose, her face alight with a happiness he hadn't been able to elicit despite his clumsy attempts at courtship. A knot tightened in his gut, a cold, hard ball of resentment. He turned and stomped back towards town, the image of them together burned into his mind. The next day, Jedediah found himself casually chatting with old Mrs. Gable outside the general store. He leaned against the porch railing, trying to appear nonchalant. "Heard Samuel's been spending a lot of time with that Rose woman." Mrs. Gable, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, peered at him over her spectacles. "She seems a nice enough thing." "Quiet." Jedediah chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Quiet is one word for it. Did you ever wonder why a woman her age would come all the way out here as a mail-order bride? Seems a little desperate, don't you think?" Mrs. Gable's expression hardened slightly. "She's a widow, Jedediah. Lost her husband to influenza. Not everyone has your advantages." He pressed on, undeterred. "I heard whispers, you know. Back east. About a checkered past. Nothing concrete, mind you. Just whispers. About a man, or two. Before her husband." He let the implications hang heavy in the air. Later that afternoon, Jedediah found himself coincidentally bumping into Thomas at the blacksmith shop. He recounted the same carefully crafted narrative, planting seeds of doubt and suspicion. Each telling fueled his anger, twisting the knife of jealousy deeper into his heart. He was doing this for Samuel, he told himself, to protect him from a woman who was clearly unsuitable. But even as he spoke, a small voice whispered in the back of his mind, a voice that knew the truth. He was doing it for himself. A pie-eating proposal. The air crackled not with electricity, but with simmering indignation. Jedediah, cornered near the cider press, looked like a weasel caught in a snare. Martha Higgins, arms crossed and bosom puffed out, led the charge. "Jedediah Perkins," she boomed, her voice cutting through the festive chatter of the town square, "you owe Rose an apology." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Jedediah stammered. I just said she was older than expected. Older than expected and a whole lot wiser than you'll ever be, Silas retorted, stepping forward. She's done more for this town in a month than you have in 50 years of breathing our air. Heads nodded in agreement. Jedediah's face flushed a mottled red. He mumbled something about just gossiping and slunk away, disappearing into the throng of people. The annual pie-eating contest was about to begin. Rose stood beside the table laden with pies, her face pale despite the cheering crowd. When her name was called, a roar erupted. "Go, Rose, go!" they yelled, their voices a wave of support washing over her. She managed a weak smile and took her place. The other contestants were young, eager, their eyes glinting with competitive fire. Rose, her spectacles slightly askew, looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. The starting bell rang and the contestants plunged their faces into the pies. Rose hesitantly took a bite. Pumpkin, sweet and spiced, filled her mouth. She chewed slowly, deliberately, while others devoured their pies with reckless abandon. Cheers for Rose mingled with groans of overstuffed contestants. Samuel watched from the sidelines, his heart aching for her. He couldn't bear to see her humiliated, even if she was trying her best. As the minutes ticked by, contestants dropped out, faces smeared with pie filling. Rose was still eating, albeit slowly, a determined glint in her eyes. Suddenly, Samuel jumped onto the table, scattering leftover pie crust. The crowd gasped. He knelt before Rose, his eyes shining with earnestness. "Rose," he said, his voice ringing clear across the square. "I know this isn't the most romantic setting, but I can't wait another minute." He pulled a small, tarnished silver ring from his pocket. "I don't care about your age or what anyone else thinks. I care about your kindness, your spirit, the way you make me laugh. Rose, will you marry me?" Rose stared at him, pie filling clinging to her cheek. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring her vision. A collective gasp swept through the crowd, followed by an expectant silence. She swallowed, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Samuel," she whispered. "Yes, I will." The square erupted in cheers. People surged forward, congratulating them both. Someone handed Rose a napkin and Samuel gently wiped the pie filling from her face. He looked at her, his eyes filled with love. The pie-eating contest was forgotten. In that moment, surrounded by the joyful noise of the town, Rose knew she had finally found her home. True love found. Rose's gaze locked onto the plain gold ring resting on Samuel's calloused hand. Sunlight caught its surface, scattering golden motes that shimmered in her brimming eyes. Kneeling before her, his expression earnest, a hopeful quaver underpinned his words. "Rose, will you marry me?" The burden of past heartache, the sting of Jedediah's callous rejection, felt suddenly featherlight. This wasn't the impulsive, headlong rush of youthful fancy she once envisioned. This was profound, substantive. It was a partnership, a shared horizon, a refuge built from respect and tenderness. "Yes, Samuel," she whispered, emotion constricting her throat. "Yes, I will marry you." He rose swiftly, his face illuminated by a smile that smoothed away the harsh lines carved by sun and wind. He pulled her close, his sturdy embrace a haven against the lingering cold of solitude. Holding her near, he murmured, "I promise to cherish you, Rose, every day for the rest of our lives." Later in the week, a figure materialized on the porch, stirring up memories. Jedediah, his face etched with remorse, stood awkwardly, fidgeting with the brim of his hat. He seemed diminished, somehow smaller. "Rose," he mumbled, his voice rough-edged. "I came to say I'm sorry. I was a fool. A blind, hard-headed fool. You deserve better." Rose remained steadfast, her heart free from the shackles of bitterness. She had discovered serenity. "Thank you, Jedediah," she responded calmly. "I accept your apology. I wish you happiness too." The wedding was a small, intimate gathering. The air hummed with the fragrance of wildflowers, blending with the comforting aroma of warm bread. The townsfolk, once wary, now radiated genuine happiness for the couple. Rose wore a simple yet elegant, cream-colored dress, Samuel's mother's gown, expertly tailored to fit her like a glove. The fabric whispered against her skin, a physical embodiment of the love that had enfolded her. As she walked toward him, Samuel's eyes met hers, filled with an adoration that lifted her spirits. He wasn't a dashing youth, but he was her champion, a man of integrity, compassion, and unwavering loyalty. The preacher spoke of steadfast love, of commitment and understanding. Rose listened, her hand secure in Samuel's. When it came time for the vows, their voices, clear and resolute, carried their promises into the fading light of day. "With this ring," Samuel declared, his voice imbued with feeling, "I give you my heart and my life." As he placed the gold band on her finger, Rose knew, beyond any doubt, that she had discovered her true partner. Years mattered less than the depth of a love that had taken root in the most unexpected soil. Their shared journey was only beginning.